All right, I'm gonna start right now. So,大家好，大家今天欢迎来我们今天的网络讲座。我是 CSC 的这个经济发展部的商业顾问我的名字叫黄子峰。我们今天请来了一个讲员叫 Matthew Murillo，他是一个律师。先来介绍一下我们这个CSC 部门的这些 programs。我们有很多就是部门可以实现您的商业梦想。第一个就是我们这个 Small Business Program，我们这个 Small Business Program，我们有很多小型企业辅助计划，这个计划有很多方法可以帮您实现您的创业梦想。我们提供1对1的商业咨询服务，也可以帮助您建立您商业计划，帮你启动您的企业，也有很多商业的资源列入今天的商业研讨会。那下一个呢，我们有一个 Financial Empowerment，这个就是一个个人理财的部门，可以帮助您提高理财方面的知识，比如去帮你做一个生涯规划，也会提供一些课程，怎么可以存款，增加您的收入，申请一些福利让你对信用方面更加了解。然后下一个呢，就是最后一个，我们有一个 Vital Program，这个就是我们的免费报税服务如果你们的就是收入不高于6万块呢，我们可以帮你报税，然后也可以做那些收入税收递免，还有儿童税收递免。如果你符合这个呢，我们帮你报税的时候就会直接帮你申请。然后这个你们就可以看到是我们这个 ETP 的这个 series，就是我们的企业培训班这些课程都是想帮您教您经营一家成功的小型企业所需的基本知识今天的这个课程就是如何选择一个企业结构，由律师来讲解。然后呢，如果你们今天是有什么问题呢，你们就可以等到最后的时候在那个聊天室里头把这个问题打进去现在呢，就让我们这个会计师这个律师开始说。So Matt, the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you, Johnny. So welcome everyone. The topic today is an LLC for me. We're going to talk about choosing the right entity for your new business. Like Johnny said, my name is Matthew Murillo. I am an entrepreneur's attorney. I'll get into a little bit of background on myself in a minute. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide.
OK，so 他今天就是这个律师，他就是来会说这个 LLC 合不合适你现在他会再介绍一下自己。
So my basics, why me, right? Why should you listen to somebody like me? You don't know me from the next person on the street. So like I said earlier, I call myself an entrepreneur's attorney, and I'll tell you a little bit about why after this screen. But I went to the University of Redlands. I majored in philosophy and psychology with a minor in speech pathology. And then I went to law school at the University of Laverne and graduated and got my state bar, my California bar license in 2009 and admitted to the Texas bar in 2020.
So 他就是说为什么要相信他是听他的，因为好像说你也不知道他是谁，就是如果在路上你也真的不知道他是个律师嘛，那这是就是他说自己就是等于是一个企业家的那个律师，他上过好像2个不同的一个大学，就是去了那个 University of Redlands， 在这里学过pathology， 然后上那个法律的学呢，他去了 University of Laverne， 然后在加州那个 bar 他09年就考了，然后 Texas 这个 bar 他20年也把他考上了。那现在去下一张。
So the highlights for me, for my business, who I am, you can see a list of things that I've been able to accomplish so far since 2009. Admitted to the Federal District Court. I've been featured on Fox Hills Digest magazine, on Hollywood Weekly, voted top 100, top 40 under 40, top 1% in the US. I've been featured on American Law TV, Avo's Client Choice Award. I've written multiple books, and I also currently have 4 for-profit businesses and 1 not-for-profit as well that I'm running.
OK， 他就是在很多那些杂志和那些电视里头都出过来，然后呢还是就是一个那个最好的那是律师，就是美国100个最好的那个在40岁以下的律师呢，他也在里头被说过，自己呢也开了4个是赚钱的这些生意。然后呢，自己也写了几个不同的书，他就是在很多地方被发表过。
So when I'm talking to anybody about entity protection, entity strategy, I'm generally taking a specific perspective. I'm taking a specific idea. One of my main focuses is to find those loopholes that's going to benefit you and set you up for long-term success. With that is corporate strategy, right? Picking the right type of business entity to protect you and also be ready for when you decide to expand down the road. I provide also education and training for ongoing compliance for the business for the next generation, whether that's your kids or you decide to sell the business. And then trying to resolve any outstanding tax issues with the help of the CPA that you use for your business, anything like that. Providing solutions that are facing serial entrepreneurs, which I hope every one of you will eventually become by adding to your business as you continue to grow.
So 他的咨询理念呢，就是想帮你们，就是利用法律内的漏洞，那些创业利益并好像建立长期，然后呢就是企业知识战略，然后还有企业保护与扩展战略，然后持续合规教育培训，还有就是想帮那个下一代成功，就是你啊你的孩子啊他们，然后解决未解决的税务问题。还有特别是为连续创业者面临的问题提供解决方案。
So why do we do this? Why do we care about entity choice, right? Entity choices affect taxes, owner liability, risk management, industry regulations, insurance, compliance requirements, and they help prevent a bad divorce down the road from your partners, right? Your business partners. There's so many things that go into entity choice and compliance. So you want to make sure that you're choosing the right type of entity for your type of business and for the situation that you have.
那他就是说，我们为什么要做这个呢？我们就是实体选择和策略影响，就是因为你选这个 entity， 你选这个呢，是会影响很多不同的东西，会影响到你这个税收所有者责任风险管理。行业法规还有保险合规要求，然后就是把这些东西都做起来，就是想保护你不要以后呢，就是有一个不好的一个离婚，就是好像如果你有一个 partner 跟他一起做生意，就不想搞到这个有一个不好的离婚，所以懂这些呢就是很重要的。
So before we get into the different types of entities, I want to talk a little bit about the biggest problem facing entrepreneurs. So let's be realistic about it. It's lawyers, right? There's a lack of trust. We tend to use legal language a lot, so we make it confusing and difficult for the everyday person to understand what all this stuff actually means, what corporation actually does for you, what it means, what an LLC actually does and what it means, and how you can keep that protection. So hopefully today we'll be able to remove some of that for you so that you can then make the best decision for you.
他呢，就是刚才就是说，那你想开这个创业呢，就是最大的问题，就是对你们来说是什么呢？他就是说，就是律师，就是律师，因为他们就是有这些缺乏信任，就是有一点不信任他们吧，可能就是还有那个就是律师语言，就是他们说的那些字呢，可能有时候听起来是不懂的，所以这些都是对你们就是一个是最大的问题。
So today's agenda is pretty basic. We're going to overview different entity types that you can choose. We're going to go for some of the more common ones. We're going to look at entity choice considerations, things that I tend to think about when I'm trying to figure out what type of entity is going to be best for my clients. And then I'm going to give you a brief overview on how to put it all together, how to assess what kind of entity is going to be good for you.
So 今天呢，我准备要说的东西，今天的议程就是先会说那些各种实体类型的概述，然后呢会说这些实体选择注意事项，然后呢最后呢就把今天说的那些东西全部都放在一起。
So first we're going to take an overview of each of the most common entity choices. So what are those choices?
首先他开始呢，就先会看一下就全部就是实体选项概述。那这些选项有几个呢？
Okay, we have sole proprietorships is a very common entity choice. General partnerships, limited partnerships, limited liability companies, commonly referred to as LLCs, or corporations.
都可以选哪几个呢？那你有5个可以选的，那就是这5个呢，就是有第一个这个 Sole Proprietorship 就是独资企业，然后有一个普通合伙企业，然后有一个有限合伙企业，还有一个有限责任公司，然后最后一个就是 corporation 就是企业。
So first up is sole proprietorship. This is the easiest entity to set up because there's no setup required. There's nothing that you have to register, nothing with the Secretary of State. It's just you wake up one day and you decide to go into business.
Okay, so 你做这个就是第一个就是这个独资企业呢，这个就是他说这是最简单做的一个，因为你做这个你大概就是什么都不用怎么做的，就是没有什么 setup， 你就是单一成员企业的默认实体就是这个。
Can you actually go back?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I just stopped halfway. So I'm going to preface this by saying I know enough about tax to get in trouble. So make sure you stay for that second half for the tax side of it. But the sole proprietorship is not separate from the business, right? You as the individual are not separate from the business. So you're going to be taxed at a self-employment rate. Typically, that is going to be more than some of these other entity types. And the owner, because it's not separate from the business, the owner keeps all of the liability associated with the business debts.
那就是不是所有者的独立税务实体，然后这个企业利润和损失流向所有者，收入需交纳自雇税，然后呢，所有者对所有企业债务承担无限责任。
All right, LLCs. So this is kind of a hybrid. It combines some features of a partnership and of corporation. Now with an LLC, there is some protection for all the members, but that liability protection is limited. It does have a lot of flexibility in the way that you operate and the way that you manage it. And it's a lot less requirements for compliance. So that's why this is typically a favorite for individuals, because there aren't as many restrictions on how they do things. The default is that the individuals are taxed as a partnership or as a sole proprietorship. Yeah, we can leave it at that.
Okay. So 那这个就是 LLC 这个呢，就是有限责任的公司，也是有很多人选这个的。那这个就是结合合伙企业和公司特征的混合性商业组织性质，然后所有成员的有限责任，灵活经营管理，还有默认值，这是实体层面不征税。收入和损失传递给全员项 A， 然后呢，这个就是国家法律的产物。
So with limited liability companies, the biggest thing to remember is that you do have options for how you are taxed. One of the most common questions or common things that I get are requests to open an S-Corp. An S-Corp is a tax election that can be chosen by the LLC. The LLC can also be chosen to be taxed as a corporation or disregarded and taxed as a partnership.
OK， 所以你开这个有限责任公司呢，就是有很多不同的方法可以被 tax。你可以一个方法就是好像开一个 S 的公司，或者可以无视掉，还只是好像一个公司一样用一个 escrow 来把它做 taxation 的。
So next we have corporations. There's 2 ways that you can have a corporation. One is an S-Corp and one is a C-Corp. So even though an S-Corp is a tax election, there are certain restrictions that come into play when you structure a corporation and you want to be taxed as an S-Corp.
对，所以那如果你想做一个公司呢，它就是有2种方法可以做的。一种方法就是做一个 S-Corp， 然后一种方法就是做一个 C-Corp。可是你就是做这一种呢，好像 S-Corp 就是有很多不同的东西是不能做的。
So first with the S-Corp, The restrictions are that there are limitations on ownership. You have to have 100 or fewer owners. That can be individuals, estates, trusts. You can only have one kind of stock, and you cannot be a non-resident alien if you have an S-Corp.
So 如果你做这个 S 公司呢，这个 S 公司的特点呢，就是所有权限制，你只能有100个或更少的所有者，那个个人庄园或某些信托，然后呢不可以就是从外国的，就是没有分诸名外国人所有者，然后只能有一个，就是不允许多类股票。
So with the S-Corp as well, the owners also have limited liability. And with the S-Corp, there's only one level of tax, and that's on the owner's salary that they pay themselves. Apart from that, 1% of ownership or 1 share of ownership is how profits and losses are allocated, which is different from an LLC. You can own 50%, but allocate profits at a different value. So
那这个 S 继续说这个 S 公司的特点呢，就是所有 S 公司所有者的优先责任，那个呢就是对合理公司征收足够税，然后按每股每天计算的收入分配，不允许特殊分配。
So with a C Corp, you have 2 layers of tax. One is at the corporate level. The other one is at the personal level with any income that the shareholders receive, the owners. There are ways that you can potentially avoid it. And I'll let that next session get into that.
OK，就是这个 C 的公司的这些特点呢，就是收入双重征税，就是企业所得税加那个股息收入影响接受者征税，那就是有很多方法不用给这个税的，可是可以等到那个下一堂的时候，让那个我们这个 Jeff 欢迎这个 CPA 再来说。Are you done with the slide or next slide? Back to
Next slide.
OK.
So other characteristics of a C Corp. It's easy to transfer the stock, the ownership, because there's really no restrictions to who can be part of that ownership. But it also comes with a lot more formalities than an LLC. With a corporation, you have to keep your annual shareholders minutes. You have to keep board of directors minutes and resolutions. The record keeping on the financial side is also a lot more stringent.
那这个 C Corp 继续再说，就是C Corp 的特点呢，就是易于转让公司股票。那公司收续可能很繁琐，就好像说那个决议、年会、会议纪要，还有财务记录保存，这些东西都要看着的。
We can skip this one, actually. This one was
Okay.
supposed to be out. So for liability, generally speaking, when you have a C corporation, the owners are not going to be personally liable for any of the business debts unless there's some kind of crime that was committed, right? Either they were negligent or there was some kind of fraud that was committed in order to obtain like a loan, something like that. Corporate veil, which is what we call that protection that you get from the corporation, it can be pierced to hold the owners personally liable when that happens, when there's fraud, negligence, or if there's a personal guarantee.
那这个 C Corp 责任呢，就是 C 公司所有者承担有限责任，那个人不对企业债务承担责任，然后可能因他们所犯的罪行，例如疏忽或欺诈而承担个人责任，然后公司面纱可以被刺破，那这个公司面纱就是好像说，你如果开这个 C Corporation 这种公司呢，它有一种保护，可是如果你好像它就是保护你不会有什么罪，可是如果你犯了这些东西呢，它就可以刺破这个面纱， 追究所有者的个人责任。
So next we have partnerships, and there's typically two types of partnerships. There's a general partnership and a limited partnership.
OK，那就是做伙伴关系呢，通常就是有两种，一个就是这个普通合伙，然后还有一个呢就是那个有限合伙制。
So with the way that these are formed, limited partnerships, you do have to file some documents with the Secretary of State to show who the general partner is and who the limited partners are. For general partnerships, you don't have to file anything. It can just be you decide one day to go into business with your friend. It's almost like you're both sole proprietors, but you're working together.
OK。So 这两个不同的东西呢，就是那个有限合伙与普通合伙呢，就是那个对性那个呢，就是有限合伙需要提交有限合伙证书，然后当两个或更多人一起那个创业时默认存在一般合伙关系，然后那个合作伙伴那个类型呢，就是有限合伙。有量重类型的合伙人，至少一名普通合伙人和一名有限合伙人，普通合伙只有普通合伙人。
All right, so for liability, general partners are always going to be liable for anything that the partnership does, including the debts. So if you have a partnership with someone and you take out a loan for the business, the general partner is going to still be liable for that debt. The limited partners will not be. So if you have a limited partnership, you're going to have one situation where one person is liable, the other is not. If you have a general partnership, you're going to have a situation where both are liable. Now, in either scenario, the general partners are the only ones that can actually bind the business. They can sign contracts on behalf of the business.
OK，所以这个就是这个有限合伙还有普通这个合伙呢，这是两个不同的。就是如果是那个普通合伙的那个呢，就是如果欠什么债啊、欠什么钱呢，就是两个合伙都是有责任的。可是那个有限的那个呢，就有时候只是一个。那个责任呢，如果再说一次呢，就是现在这里写的那个就是普通合伙人对合伙债务承担个人的责任，然后有限合伙人一般不承担个人的责任。那管理那个呢，就是有限合伙的日常管理和潜力通常保留给普通，然后合伙人呢，就是有限合伙人可能对某些非常有限的事项拥有治理权。
So as far as profit and loss is concerned for the partnerships, when you have general partners, the default is that they equally share in the profits and in the losses, regardless of what their contribution is. When you have limited partners, they typically share in the profits and losses based on their contribution.
OK， 但这个就是有限这个合伙呢，还有普通合伙呢，就是有那个普通合伙呢，就是开始是如果赚的那些钱呢，他们都是分的就是 equal 的，就是50-50的。可是那个有限合伙呢，就是看那个损益按合伙人给自的出资比例来分配的。
So as far as the tax, I'm going to make this one super quick because I'm sure it'll be touched on the next topic. But LLCs, if you don't file additional paperwork after you register your LLC or you're going to be taxed as a partnership if there's multiple individuals involved by default. So that means that each of the partners are going to be taxed based on their share of income. There's no tax at the business level.
那这个 partnership 就 OK， 所以这个合伙税收呢，它就税收这部分就不说那么多，因为等一下我们有 Jeff Wang他来好好的解释一下。可是呢，都是来说一下，就是默认情况下有限责任公司作为合伙企业征税，然后转嫁税就是实体层面不征税，就是合伙人对合伙收入的可分配分额征税。
So now the fun part, let's go form shopping. This is the part where we talk about what state to register your entity. A lot of times people want the benefits of registering in Nevada, in Delaware, Wyoming, Wisconsin, some state that gives you some additional benefits, like staying anonymous. Johnny, do you want to translate that before I keep going with that, or?
Okay, so 我们现在就是去到一个最好玩的一部分，就是我们去论坛购物吧。那就是说，你开始做这些的时候，你就是想看在哪一个州，就是好像加州啊、Wisconsin，就是这些其他的这些州去哪里开始做，因为每一个州的呢，他们就是这些法律的这些东西都有时候是不同的。OK，
so for most small businesses, I never recommend going out of state. The only time I might recommend it is if you're going to have other investors, maybe corporate investors, venture capital investment firms. But typically for small businesses, it's a bad idea because you're just complicating the filings that you have to create because of the way that California works with its nexus requirement, right, which is its connection to the state. Most individuals are not going to see the benefit of registering in another state, and should just instead register in California if they live or the business is in California.
Okay, so 他就是说，如果好像最大的，如果可以给一下 advice，就是给那些小企业呢，如果要做呢，他通常根本不会叫你们去一个其他的州来做这个 filing，就是开这个企业的。除了一个原因，如果可以想到呢，就是如果是你呢有很多投资者是从其他的那些地方呢，好像大一点的那些投资者是大公司的那些呢，那可能会去这部分这样再想一想。Next. Okay.
Yeah, next one.
Okay.
We're good. So now we're gonna put it all together, right? We went through an overview of the different entity types, the most common ones. Now we're gonna look at some different considerations to make that involve those.
Okay, so 他现在就会把全部这些东西都放在一起来做这个选择的时候，就应该要想些什么。
So here's a list of some of the most common things that I consider when trying to figure out what type of entity is going to be best for my clients. And Johnny, I'll just do 2 at a time just to make it easy. So first is how much risk is involved, right? If you have a company or a business that has a lot of foot traffic, you're at a much higher risk for personal injuries, right? Physical injuries. So you might look at a corporation over an LLC or a partnership. If you are getting outside funding, like I mentioned, venture capitalists, they typically want to see a C corporation. If you're going to be self-funded, maybe an LLC is going to be easiest because of the ease of transferring it in.
OK， 那这些呢，就是全部他会大概就是这些是最重要要想的东西来选这个 LLC 就是 Sole Proprietorship 的之前的时候。那第一个呢，就是要看你这个风险有多大。那好像说，如果你这个公司呢，就是有很多人一天到晚走进来的，就是走来走去那个呢，那你风险可能会大一点。那他就可能会说，那介绍你开一个 corporation 好过开一个 LLC。那第二个呢，就是这样如何自助，就是你的这些资金是从哪里来的？如果好像说是很多钱是从其他的其他人来把那个投资者呢，你就可能会想开一个 C corporation， 他们通常是喜欢看到这种的。
So another consideration is how many owners are going to be involved. If you're going to have several owners, you may want to lean towards a corporation because of that income split, that profit and loss split. If you can afford to pay yourself a salary, you might be better off with the corporation and taking maybe that S election, just because otherwise you end up being taxed as a sole proprietor, which may end up giving you a higher tax liability.
So 第一，他刚才就是 how many owners are involved， 这个就是有多少业主参与呢？如果做这个，他就是要看你有几个，因为可能也要做那个 corporation， 因为就是很多不同的那个前进的方法。And then Matt, could you actually do one at a time? These are actually pretty important. So could you actually go over, can I afford to pay myself a salary again so I can translate them a bit better?
Yeah, so if you can afford to pay yourself a salary, you might want to lean towards a corporation, because if you are an LLC and you're disregarded, you might end up getting taxed as a sole proprietor, which is going to give you a higher tax liability. I'm going to add a little bit more to that, but I'll let you translate that first.
So 如果你可以就是可以给自己薪水，可以给自己工资呢，那就通常是想做一个 corporation。可是因为你如果就是想做一个 LLC 呢，它通常就是来让你给税的这部分的时候呢，会好像当你是一个私人的，就是一个 sole proprietorship，那这部分就有很多就是不够那个 corporation 这部分好的。OK。
So that question is mainly for the decision of whether to request that S-Corp election, right? Whether you're an LLC or a corporation. If you can afford to pay yourself a salary, it's going to be better to do an S corporation or a C corporation as opposed to an LLC.
所以这是最后呢，就是说，如果你是可以给到自己这个人工啊，这个人工呢，那就是通常是选做 corporation 就做这个 LLC 这部分。那可是呢，如果可以呢，他就是说去选择做那个 S corporation 或者那个 C corporation 好过能做那个 LLC。Okay.
So the next factor is, do you have other W-2 income to offset? And this is also a question of whether you take that S election or not. Because if you do take that S election, there's potential there for you to be able to offset some of your regular W-2 income with those losses in an S corporation, if that's what you're going to have.
对，那他这个呢，就是看你有没有其他的 W2，就是人工，就是 W2 来做。如果有呢，就是最后还是看你做不做这个 S-Corp。如果做呢，它就是你如果有其他的这个 W2 加上用这个 S-Corp， 你就是有其他的方法可以就是搞这个税的这方面。Okay.
So the next two go hand in hand, and it's whether you're going to be an online only, like if you have a Shopify store and that's it, or if you're going to have a physical location. A Shopify store or some kind of online store does not have foot traffic. There's going to be no potential physical injury that gets involved. With that, you might be better with an LLC instead of a corporation, depending on the complexity of the business.
Okay. So 这个呢，就是这个问题和下一个问题都是有关系的。那这个第一部分呢，就是说我的这个生意呢，你准备开的这个生意呢，是在网上做的呢，还是有一个真的一个店子，就是一个铺头的？因为如果你是在网上做的这个生意呢，你可能就没有那么多人会走进来走来走去，那就可能性有一个突然间他们被受伤啊，这个可能性就少很多。可是你如果是有一个铺头的，就是会有很多人走进来，那就是这个可能性就在，他们可能如果会被受伤。那就可能去做这个 corporation 好过做一个 LLC。如果你是网上的这种呢，就不会有这个就是可能性不那么大，就是这些人可能会被受伤，那就做 LLC 好。可是如果是有一个会有很多人的那个呢，那就最好做那个 corporation。Okay.
The next question is, what assets are you protecting? And that basically just means if you just want more protection just because you want more peace of mind. If that's the case, you may want to lean towards a corporation instead.
Okay. So 这个问题就是说我在保护什么资产？就是说如果你是有很多这些资产这些东西要保护的呢，那最好是选 corporation. Okay.
The next is what your go-to market strategy is and whether or not multiple entities make sense. And that kind of goes with that next one, the projection, 1, 5, 10 years out. What does business look like? I'll let you translate that and then I'll continue on that one.
Okay, so 这个就是我的 GTM 就是去到市场的这个策略是什么？然后倍数有意义吗？就是开很多不同的，就是选一个 LLC， 然后选一个 corporation， 就是不同的这些是有意义吗？是什么时候才有意义？ 那他就会说这下一部分呢就是1年5年这个呢是有关系的，他现在就会说 OK。
So with that, an example of that would be if you own property and you want to have a business on that property, right? In that case, you probably want to have two separate entities, one to own the property and one for the business. Whether or not you have partners involved might change whether you create a partnership, whether you create a corporation or an LLC for each of those different activities.
那就是跟刚才说的，就是如果什么时候才应该要选几个不同的实体呢？那好像说一个 example 就是一个时候呢，就是好像说如果你有很多地产，就是很多地，可是呢在这个地呢，好像说你有个屋子，你买了这个地，有这个屋子，那在这个屋子里头呢，你想开一个生意，那这个时候呢，你可能会想着要有2个不同的一个实体，一个 LLC 啊，一个 partnership 啊，就是伙伴的那种啊，或者一个 corporation，这些就是看你这部分的那个情况。可是如果你是买了一个地，然后在这个地上想开一个生意，这个是一个时候你可能想选不同的一个实体。OK。
The next one is passive income, right? A lot of times people start businesses because they have an opportunity to create passive income. If that is the primary way that this business will generate income for you, you cannot take the S-Corp election because an S-Corp is limited to how much income can be passive.
OK， 如果你想就是好像说你开这个生意呢是一个被动收入的方法呢，那你就不能选这个 S corporation， 因为 S corporation 呢你一定只有能就是多少是被动收入的，不可以超过一个号目的。所以如果你做这个生意，这个生意是你一个总方法来赚钱的呢，你就不能选 S corp。OK。
So the last thing that I like to point out is that you're not stuck with an entity choice. If you create a corporation, but maybe you're going to change how the business operates, you can always convert it into an LLC. Or if you're not sure if you're ready for all of the restrictions and requirements of a corporation, you can start off small, depending on how much risk is involved. You can start off as a sole proprietor and then register an LLC. And as business grows, as there's more risk, then convert it to a corporation.
那最后呢，就是还是有些什么呢？就是就是说，你如果选了一个东西，你不是永远要一直做的你选的那个实体的。好像说，如果你想做一个 corporation， 可是你过了一段时间呢，又想变成一个 LLC 呢，你是可以这样做的。或者好像说，你开始想做一个 sole proprietorship， 然后慢慢的等你就可以，然后在做这个 sole proprietorship 的时候呢，你可以选那个登记一个做那个 LLC， 然后等到生意够好的时候，你就可以把这个 sole proprietorship 变成一个 LLC， 这些都是可以做的。就是说你一开始的时候选的这个实体是可以变的，不是永远都是要一直做这个一个下去的。Okay.
And that's it.
Okay, so
hopefully that gave you guys some additional information on what way to lean when you're trying to figure out how to structure your business. But if you want to discuss your specific business a little bit further, I'm happy to have free individual consults. You can use that link to schedule that, and we can talk about the different considerations specifically for your business.
OK， 所以他就今天希望你们今天就学到一些你刚才不理解的东西，然后他就给你说你也可以跟他约个时间，就是一个免费的一个咨询。你如果去这个 link， 它现在放在下面那个红色的那个呢，如果你去网站那个地方打出来，你可以跟他约个时间，然后他也可以给你一个免费的1个小时的时间来跟你再咨询一下。然后如果现在有的那些问题呢，会就把这些问题先问了。如果你们如果有什么问题，也可以把这个在聊天室打进去。然后等一下2点钟开始的时候呢，我们就会有一个真正说中文的一个讲员来讲那个生意税的那一部分。So right now, we have 3 questions here, but if there's any more questions, I'm going to ask them. But I'm going to ask some of the ones we got messaged. One is I'll ask it to you in English first, and then I'm going to just translate the question in Chinese. So The question is, do I really need an entity and can I just be a sole proprietor? So 这个问题的意思就是说，我真的要做一个实体的吗？还是我可以就做那个独自经营者吗？嗯哼。
So no, you don't need an entity. It helps with the protection. You can start off as a sole proprietor, and that's actually one way that I recommend people typically start with if they are getting into a brand new industry or something they're not quite sure how it's going to work out before they invest money in registering the business, trademarks, right? Getting that whole setup. Start as a sole proprietor for a month, 2 months, a quarter, 6 months, and see how it goes.
对，那是说你真的要选一个实体吗？就是 no，他说你是不一定的，你可以就选那个，你也可以就选做那个独自实体那个，就是 sole proprietor 那个。然后呢，你可以就这样做。然后其实好像说，如果你想创业一个你不懂的那个行业里头呢，你就可以先这样做一下，就是1个月、2个月、3个月到6个月，就是再这样做一下，然后再看一下以后是怎么做。
Just a little bit more on that one.
Mhm.
The only time I would suggest starting with an entity right away is if you're going to be having to sign any contracts, like a lease or a loan agreement,
Okay.
just because of that protection.
Give me 1 second. I'm trying to make sure I say contracts and loan agreements correct. So 只有他如果就是想介绍你唯一的时候想一定要选一个实体，好像说这个 corporation 这部分的呢，就是一开始的时候是如果你要签很多那种合同，还是贷款协议，这些时候呢，如果要签这些大的这些东西，他就会介绍你去选一个 entity，好像 corporation，不只是一开始就做 sole proprietorship。Okay. Good with that question?
Yep.
Okay. And then the next one is, how is this different from a DBA?
So a DBA is doing business as, right? It's typically something that's filed with the county, and a DBA is not a separate entity. So if you go to the county, file a DBA that says, Johnny is going to be doing business as Acme Enterprise. It's like you're a sole proprietor. There's no protection that a DBA offers. It's not separate from the individual. It's just essentially having a different name that you're doing the business with.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure I understand with you. So if you do run a DBA and compared to just doing a sole proprietorship, if you're just a sole proprietorship, there's no protection like you would get from the DBA.
No, the DBA is just changing the name. It's like an also known as an alias.
Okay.
Right. A DBA and a sole proprietorship are effectively the same thing.
Okay. Okay.
I'll add some more to that, but go ahead.
Okay. So 就是如果你就是刚才那个问题呢，就是注于DBA 和有何不同？就是如果你做 DBA 还是做 sole proprietorship，就跟这个有什么不同呢？那如果你只做 DBA， 这个 DBA 只是把你这个名字换了，就是给你一个其他的名字来用。可是跟那个 sole proprietorship 是 it's related, it's DBA and sole proprietorship are basically the same, right?
Right.
Okay, so如果你只是登入做那个 DBA 呢，跟那个做那个 sole proprietorship 差不多是完全一样的。Okay.
Yeah. So when you have an LLC or a corporation, you can file a DBA for those. But all it is just saying that your legal name is this, but you're doing business as this name. That's all the DBA is.
Okay.
So that's why if you don't have an entity, it's the same as a sole proprietorship.
Okay, don't have entity. If you don't have entity, it's the same as okay. So 如果你好像选一个实体呢，就是好像选了一个 LLC 一个 corporation 就是呢，你就可以去登录做一个 DBA。你就是做这个 DBA 的原因呢，就是好像说你的公司是这个名字，你的公司是这个名字，可是你做生意就是有这个一个其他的名字，就是叫你这个 DBA。然后呢，就是最后就是说，如果你只是做这个 sole proprietorship，就是大概做生意的时候，就是自动就是选这个，跟选一个 DBA 是没有什么分别的。Okay, that one's good.
Yep.
Okay, and the next question is, if I already have an LLC set up, can I just use that basically? So I'm saying Chinese. So 如果我已经有 LLC 设置，我可以直接使用它吗？
So it depends. If you already have an LLC set up and you're using it, it depends on what the new business is going to be. And I'll give you an example. If you have an LLC set up for a marketing company, and then you want to open up a food truck, right? Those are two different levels of risk. So you don't want to use the same one. You want to create a different one. And that's one of those situations where you might create a DBA.
Okay.
I'll add some more, but.
Okay. So 就是说，如果你已经有一个 LLC，然后你是不是想使用它？那就是有时候你是可以，可是有时候呢，至少是如果在这个情况里头，你有一个 LLC，你这个 LLC 的本来的公司呢，是做营销的，就是营销顾问的这部分的。可是你想用这个 LLC 正在做那个营销那部分呢，来也开一个那个 food truck，就是那个 food truck，就是那些可以动来动去的那些吃东西的餐厅，就是那些车。那你就是想 LLC 做你这个营销的，然后也去做这个吃东西的这个车呢？那可不可以做？他现在就解释。So now you're saying if you have an LLC for a marketing company and then you want to go ahead and open up a food truck, you're about to explain the differences, right? Or like I'm going to tell them.
So there's different risk levels, right? With a marketing company, you're not going to have nearly as much risk as with a food truck because food is involved. You have hygiene issues, you have compliance that's completely different than with a marketing company. So those you want to keep completely separate.
Okay, let me say that real quick. So 就是好像说原因你是如果说你有这个营销公司，然后你想开这个卖吃的这个车的公司呢，是他们两个这种公司的那个风险是完全不一样的。就是你做这个营销的公司，那个风险是少很多，如果跟那个吃东西这个车的那个公司来比起来。所以如果是想这样做呢，那这个情况里头呢，你不敢用这个 LLC 来开这两个，你会想把它分开的。OK。
So if you have an LLC, and this is sometimes common, but you haven't been doing anything with it, you just registered it and it's just been sitting there, and now you want to start a business and use it, yes, you can absolutely do that because there's no previous risk. So there's no liability to cut off.
Okay, so 如果你好像说本来以前有登录过一个 LLC 呢，就是登录过了一个 LLC 就一直放在那个地方，可是没有再弄过，就是没有再碰过它呢。那你现在想用这个 LLC 来开一个新的生意呢，那你就可以。这个时候，因为你现在刚开始这个生意的时候，你本来呢就是一直没用，就是没有什么风险在那个地方，所以如果来做它，就是没什么问题。
So the big question with that is how much risk is already in the LLC, because I'll give you another example. If you start as marketing company, you close it, but you leave the LLC open, and then you want to start a food truck or a restaurant or something else, that's fine if the old business is shut down.
Okay.
But if you start with the restaurant that already has a lot of risk, I would say don't then continue to use it.
OK， 所以如果你本来是有一个 LLC 呢，然后你想开这个餐馆的呢，也是用这个 LLC，你是最好不要，因为你这个餐馆是有很多风险的。可是如果说你本来想开这个 LLC 呢，就是用这个 LLC，你本来是有一个生意的，然后你想转成做那个餐馆那个呢，可是你本来的那个生意呢是已经不做了，那就可能可以这样。可是如果是两个一起呢，就是最好不要，因为那个餐馆的那个风险很大。OK， 让。That's it. Okay, so we have another question. It says, if I have an LLC already for a restaurant and to cloth line, not sure what that means. So I'm going to try to, maybe it means like if I have an LLC already for a restaurant and I want to also, like, I guess I'll put into two questions. Yeah, into a clothing line. Is that okay? Or if I have an LLC already and I want to have it for a clothing line and a restaurant, is that okay?
I would say keep it separate because of the risk that's associated with the restaurant, with food poisoning, right? All those different things, employees. You want to keep that with the restaurant, and the clothing line isn't as much risk, right? You're not going to be sued by somebody because their shirt's too big.
Okay.
So keep it separate.
Yeah, I get you. So 刚才呢，我们又有了一个问题，就是说，如果我已经有一个我有为餐馆有一个 LLC 了，可是我也想自己去开一个就是卖衣服的这种店呢，我可不可以这样做？那我们就把它分成两个问题，就是说，可不可以用这个 LLC 来当做两个生意，就是这个 LLC 来做餐馆的，然后也做那个卖衣服的，或者从这个衣服变成餐馆的变成卖衣服的。这个律师呢，就是好像刚才说的，就是最好别这样，因为最后呢，那个原因还是一样的。你做这个餐馆，那个风险是很大的，好像说人家在你这个地方吃东西啊，可以吃到不舒服的，吃到有一些病啊不舒服啊，还是你人工也可以做错些什么，所以那个风险就很大。可是你做这个卖衣服的店呢，就不会有什么可能就是风险那么大，人家不会说哦，你这个衣服的这个窿太大了，会弄到我不舒服还是什么。所以呢，最好还是如果从餐馆变成这个卖衣服的，就是最好把它们分开，不要把它们放在一样的 LLC 里头。Okay.
So the biggest thing there is the protection, right? You want to keep all the risk within one place. So if you're using one LLC for both, if the restaurant gets sued, any money that you make from the clothing line also is at stake. If for some reason the clothing line gets sued because you broke a contract with a vendor or something, all the money from the restaurant is also at stake.
Okay.
But keeping them separate is always going to be better.
所以最好呢，还有一个其他的原因，就是把它们分出来开的原因呢，就是因为如果你开这个餐馆，你有这个 LLC，然后是开这个餐馆的，然后旁边就是开着这个卖衣服的公司，可是万一你被人家告，就是告你这个餐馆这部分呢，你这个衣服的公司的那个钱呢，就是收入也可以被他们拿的，然后反过来也是一模一样，就是如果你开这个卖衣服的呢，被告。这个餐馆的那个赚的钱也可以被他们拿走的，所以最好呢，这个也是一个其他的原因，最好把他们分开。
Yep. Anything else?
That's it. That's the last question.
Okay.
Okay. So, I'm gonna say thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for today's presentation. Definitely really enlightening. I'm gonna say it in the Chinese right now. 我想再谢谢一下 Matt 今天来帮我们说的这个讲座，就是学了很多新的东西。我们现在在那个聊天室呢会有一个 survey，请大家把它填了这个就会帮到我们以后的这些讲座，会帮到很多。现在放在这里。So yeah, I'm just putting a survey in the chat right now for everyone to see. I want to say thank you again to Matt. It's the first one. If everyone could fill out the survey, and thank you again, Matt. Thank you so much for today's presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, we're gonna leave it on because then the next presentation is going to be the same one. So 大家，如果你是已经参加我们下一个就是2点钟开始那个有 Jeff 换一个会计师来解释那个税的那一部分的呢，就是我们2点钟就会开始了，所以你们就等一下4分钟，我们就会很快开始。谢谢大家。
I will go ahead and turn off my video and let you guys take it over.
Thank you so much.